Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle. This is Michelle Reads YA, and today I am bringing you a video just where I am going to talk to you about some books and authors that I have changed my mind about in the last couple of years. I feel like this year in particular I have become more of a critical reader, and I think that just comes with reading more books and reading a more variety of books and going back and looking at my shelves and my Goodreads and just like looking at the books that I once upon a time thought were so good and realizing now several years later that they aren't. And I'm going to start this with someone and a book that I talked about in my last video. I did the anti-TBR tag and I'll put that up above, but I just want, this really is what spurred this video idea. So that is Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. I read this for the first time in 2013 and I have only read it once. So it's been on my shelves the whole time. I am not gonna lie, I have very fond memories of reading this the first time and thought it was a good contemporary. And then a couple years ago, there was an article that came out, and I will link it down below. It's gonna be the first thing you see in my description, where it calls out this book as being racist, and there was a lot of talk about it on Bookternet, and I think it's very valid. And what I also think is very valid is that Rainbow Rowell has not addressed any of the criticisms in her book at all, and that's really where the issue lies. Yes, the issue lies that Park and the descriptions of Park and his name being Park is all racist, and the way that Eleanor also sees Park as racist. But the most damaging thing with this whole situation is that Rainbow Rowell just refuses to acknowledge it. So all she would have to do is be like, yes, this book came out 8 years ago and I have learned so much and I am so sorry. But she's not doing that. And now it is officially being turned into a movie and it's still not being addressed. And if I'm not mistaken, the director is Asian. So I have no idea how this is going to work. All I know is that I will not be rereading this. I have unhauled it. I'm putting it on haul soon. So yeah, it's just, so when I was doing the anti-TBR tag, it really brought me back to the first time that I read this book and how my feelings have changed so much from it because of all the things I have learned about Rainbow Rowell and about this book. So I think it's okay that we change our minds, and it's okay that we look back and be like, yeah, that is problematic. I don't really like this book anymore, and that's okay. The next book I would like to talk about is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. I listened to this book, I remember where I was when I listened to this book. I was listening to it in the car. I was on my way to find an apartment in Greensboro. So like, it's very vivid memory. And I thought I liked it, but also wasn't sure. And this was before I was on BookTube or like really part of Bookternet or anything, and gave it 5 stars, even though like I didn't like the ending. I didn't like the romance or anything, but looking at the reviews on Goodreads, so many people had given it 5 stars and that they were like crying over it and everything. So I was like, well, maybe I'm wrong and I just didn't like the ending and it's me. So I gave it 5 stars. And then I reread it again a couple years later, and honestly I don't really remember rereading it, but I know I reread it physically, and I had a very big problem with it this time. And a lot of things in my personal life had changed after I reread it this time. Finch in this book has bipolar disorder, and so do I. But the way his bipolar disorder is described is just what I would like to call over-dramatization of it, and not an accurate portrayal of someone really dealing with bipolar disorder. So I don't think Jennifer Niven did a good job in representing mental illness in this book, especially with what happens with Finch. And I don't want to spoil anything. If you have seen the movie or have read the book, then you know what happens. But if you have not, something happens to Finch in this book, and I really did not like it the first time I read it, but still was like, it must be me, I'm wrong, and gave 5 stars. And the second time I read it, I absolutely hated it and did lower it and give it 3 stars. And this is also going to be unhauled because I don't think this is a good representation of mental illness. I have no intentions of reading it again. I feel like there are so many other YA contemporaries that do such a better job at mental illness representation, and this just is not one of them, and so I don't want to have it on my shelves. And so this was one that I reread and changed my mind, and I just know I don't want anything to do with it anymore. On another note, this series I changed my mind about just because I don't think they're good anymore. And that's just a me thing. I don't think that this author is problematic. I don't think the books are problematic, but it's just, this is me, and probably the next one is also just me, so I just like to throw that out there. I don't think these next 2 books are problematic. I just think they're not good. And the first one is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. I remember when this first came out, my friend introduced me to these and we're like, they're so unique, they have these cool pictures inside, it's really creepy. And at the time, yes, and I think this is another one that I gave 5 stars to, and another one that I have no absolute intention of reading again ever. And that's okay. Like I said, not problematic. I don't think Ransom Riggs is problematic. I just don't think these are good books anymore. I think YA literature has moved past the need for these like books. I don't know. I honestly cannot remember anything that happens in this book. I read this one and the second one, Hollow City, and then stopped. I own the next 2. I got an arc of Map of Days somewhere. Never want to read that. And then I saw that the 6th one's coming out. I didn't even know the 5th one came out at all. So also the fact that it got, like, it was a completed trilogy and then it got picked up for 3 more books, I was like, no. So nothing wrong with these books necessarily, except that like I just don't think they're good anymore. Okay. The next one, same thing. Nothing problematic with this author. I actually really like them, but I don't like this book, and I think it's super overhyped, and I have changed my mind about this a lot. And that is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. So when this came out, or before this came out, I got an e-arc, and I read it right when I found out that I was pregnant with Rowan and was in the worst reading slump of my life. So this was not a good time for me to read this at all. Just no. I thought it was funny, but I didn't think it was like the best romance book I have ever read, and that is what all the Goodreads reviews were saying. That is what everyone on book Twitter was saying. And so this was right when I got on BookTube. So I was like, once again, I was like, oh, I'm wrong. And I gave it 4 stars. And I would just like you all to know I am no longer doing that. I am rating books for me. I am rating books how I feel like they should be rated, not how everyone else is rating them. I'm done doing that. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. Earlier this year, I went on Goodreads and put it down to 3 stars, and one of my friends in real life was like, what happened? And I was like, oh, nothing. I just, you know, it's not as good as I thought it was. And that's exactly how it is. This is also being unhauled. So I don't really have much to say about this, except that I am not a big romance reader. Like, I read the arc of this and bought it, and I'm never gonna read this again because it was fine for me. I know it's still so hyped. It's still so hyped everywhere, and just not for me. Nothing wrong with this author. I don't think the book is problematic. I know that like British reviewers had a problem with the descriptions of Henry, which I get, but I had no problem with this other than I think it's overrated. So yeah. And the very last book / author I have to talk about is Colleen Hoover's books. So the first book that I read by Colleen Hoover was Maybe Someday, and I loved it. This was probably, if not the first romance book that I had ever read, it was close to it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was beautiful. I read it in like a day. I think I cried, pretty sure. And it had the, like, most people's most hated trope, which is cheating. So a lot of people do not like it, which I get. I have no intentions of reading this again because I feel like I would hate it. And I am also more educated on Colleen Hoover's other books. The second book I read by Colleen Hoover was called Slammed, and absolutely hated this. I just looked at reviews on this book today, like doing research before I filmed this video, and there are still so many good reviews on this book, and there is an inappropriate relationship in this book that, like, I do not understand how people are like, I love it, it's so beautiful. I still don't understand. So after Slammed, I stopped reading Colleen Hoover because I realized her books and the content of her books and the relationships in all of her books are problematic. And what really solidified this for me, and if you know about Colleen Hoover, you probably know about this, but Witty Novels put out like a scathing, it really is scathing, Goodreads review of her book November 9, which I will link down below. And yeah, Colleen Hoover responded to it on Facebook. This was a couple years ago, but she was like, yeah, that was wrong. It had to do with consent, and it was very bad. And after that, I really had no more, I had no more desire to read Colleen Hoover. In one of my first unhauls, because of all these things I realized about Colleen Hoover, I unhauled all of her books that I had on my shelves and said something along the lines of she sucked, and one of my subscribers like tore into me and said that I was rude for saying that. So I still think that. So this is, you know, my opinion and my channel, so I still don't think Colleen Hoover books are good. And if you disagree, that's fine, we can agree to disagree, but I don't know what else to say except that it is my opinion. So I'm pretty sure she unsubscribed to me after she yelled at me. So that's the thing. Either way, no more Colleen Hoover for me. The book that I gave 5 stars to, Maybe Someday, is super problematic now. Like, I can see where it's problematic, and I don't have like any issues with reading about cheating. There were other things in the book besides the cheating that were problematic that I just like ignored. So yeah. So these are just a few books and authors that I have changed my mind about and will probably no longer be reading and or supporting. I know that One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston is on NetGalley, and it has been getting so many good reviews, and you would think that I would be excited for it because it's female romance, but I just don't want to get sucked into this hype again and kind of be disappointed. Like, she just wasn't for me, so I'm not gonna do it. So you will see these books again in an unhaul soon, but just want to take this time. Things have changed, become a more critical reader. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching my video. See you in my next one. Bye!